There is a bit of a shake-up in the Soho and home user NAS market recently, with some more powerful NAS devices being released that are well suited to not just providing the normal NAS features such as storage and media delivery, but also more grunt to enable more powerful applications and allowing them to more competently step into the home server space with more capable hardware for container and VM hosting. TerraMaster have released a new range of home and Soho NASs over the last few months, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look into the F4-424 Pro. Now this is a 4-bay hard disk NAS with two M2 NVMe bays on board, and it comes with an impressive 32GB of DDR5 RAM and an i3 8-core processor, and also some solid I/O. So firstly I'm going to look over the hardware, and then we can take a look into the software provided by TerraMaster, which is also a really important consideration when you're buying a NAS device, as it is how you're going to put that hardware to work for you. So a quick unboxing shows that the device is well packed in, fairly plain looking box. Mine came in another external shipping box also, and it more than adequately protects the contents. Accessories wise, it's fairly simple. There's an external PSU and a network cable, along with some hard disk mounting screws, which in many cases won't be required. Documentation is online, so just warranty information included. Looking at the NAS itself, I like the way this is put together. It's compact and functional, and it's not too obtrusive. At the front, most of the real estate is used by the 4 drive bays, and these are not lockable, but they are designed such that they can't easily be accidentally removed. They have like a push and pull motion in order to extract them. Fitting the discs in the bays themselves uses a toolless design, making it quick and easy to insert or swap out drives, and the screws included in the box are really only needed if you plan to install 2.5-inch form factor drives in those bays. At the back, the majority of the space is taken by the 120mm fan to cool the unit, along with power, 2 of the 2.5GB Ethernet ports, 2 10GB per second USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, one being USB-A and one being USB-C, and then there's an HDMI 2.1 output and the power button. If we look inside the unit, which is easy to open with a couple of screws found next to the power switch and one by the power connector, we can see it's easy to access a system board where the memory and the M.2 slots are accessible. The M.2 slots have thumb screws for easy NVMe installation. If we remove the board, we can see where the USB bootloader sits, and this is just a drive just used for things like factory resets and doing installs of the OS. You can choose where you install it, and this can be a partition on the hard disk, but personally I installed it onto the NVMe's. I personally like that my data and the OS are on different disks, so that if I do suffer a failure that can impact my data, it doesn't also impact the OS I'm trying to use to recover that data. Now let's look at the CPU architecture, because this is where the device really shines. The NAS runs an Intel Alder Lake architecture Core i3 N305 processor. The CPU was released in early 23, and it boasts a 6MB cache and 8 efficiency cores without hyperthreading, so it's 8 threads. It comes with onboard UHD graphics 770 iGPU, which has 32 execution units, and it supports 4K at 60Hz on the HDMI 2.1 interface. And this really gives it excellent transcoding and native display capabilities. The processor also natively supports hardware virtualization and PCI pass-through, making it a good platform for virtual machines, which we're going to talk about later. And from an I/O perspective, it hosts 9 Gen 3 PCI lanes in total. The board hosts 2 NVMe slots, and the CPU supports Gen 3 PCIe. So let's see what we can see about the actual bandwidth that's available to these M.2 slots. A bit of digging in LSPCI suggests that the M.2 slots have a single Gen 3 lane each. A test with FIO also supports that. In fact, we're testing the same NVMe on the M.2 slot versus over the USB 3.2 Gen 2 connection shows that we can marginally get higher throughput on the USB than into the NVMe. But honestly, I don't think it matters greatly. It could potentially limit disk performance for hosted VMs, but a single Gen 3 lane will actually already saturate both the 2.5GB Ethernet ports almost twice over. And 1GB per second disk access is likely reasonable for the kind of virtualized workloads you're going to run on a NAS like this. So yes, single Gen 3 lane, but no, I'm not really concerned about it. It does mean, however, that you shouldn't spend too much on a high performance NVMe drive to go in this unit. Gen 3 and 1000MB per second read-write will do the job just fine. And I think the I/O capacity on the CPU is why 2.5GB per second interfaces are appropriate. There is another interesting device in the F4-424 lineup if you need more though, and we're going to come back to that a bit later. Now let's get to the software, because like I said at the start, is what really matters. If you assume that the hardware works, which of course from testing it seems to work fine. So I'm looking here at the TerraMaster OS 5.1, as this is the current shipping OS. Their version 6 is in beta, but as it's beta I'm sticking with version 5.1 for the review. But I think version 6 is due to be coming out imminently, So I'm going to have another video coming up on the Macs, which is another unit in the lineup, where we're going to look at TOS 6 specifically. So first of all, let's start with the storage, as ultimately it is the foundation for any NAS. Now the unit's a 4-bay, which though relatively small, will meet most people's requirements, with hard disks already at 24 terabytes and 30 terabytes on the near horizon, and you can see my video on Hammer to find out more about this. This already has huge capacity potential, and for those who want more, there are also 6-bay offerings that have just been added to the range. At the time of this video, this is only available on the standard 424 model in the F4-424 and in the Max model, which is that even higher performance model that I talked about and I will be reviewing. In addition, the F4-424 has 2 onboard M.2 slots for NVMe installation, and external storage can be mounted via USB. For example, I tested using the TerraMaster D8 Hybrid DAS as an expansion unit, and this allowed me to add another 4 hard drive bays as well as 4 more NVMe bays to the storage for the Pro. Now you can't expand a disk array across the external NAS, so it's required to deploy a separate storage pool, but this is actually a good common sense decision. I would not feel comfortable having either a RAID or T-RAID array split over a USB cable. If it got disconnected, the RAID would likely get wrecked. And on that point, let's talk about T-RAID. So T-RAID is a flexible array implementation that addresses some of the shortcomings with standard RAIDs, such as RAID 5 and RAID 6, where the usable space on all member disks is locked to the smallest disk in the array. With T-RAID, you can increase your RAID or replace disks with larger disks and still use that same expanded disk capacity. Basically, it allows for flexibility when expanding RAIDs, but it also allows you to increase space on the array by replacing older disks with larger units. It provides real usability benefits over RAID in a similar way to SHR or Synology Hybrid RAID from Synology. And as an aside, this is also going to be extended in TOS 6, which is TerraMaster OS 6, to T-RAID Plus, which provides N+2 redundancy, similar to Synology's SHR2. And I've talked about SHR and SH2 in previous videos, which you can go find in my channel. Creating storage is simple. You create a new storage pool and you select the disk or disks to include. Select the pool type, and in this example I'm using T-RAID, and then you create the pool, and I'm going to show quickly here how you can create and expand a pool. So I'm starting with a single non-redundant configuration of a single 4 terabyte disk. Then I go to add a new disk to the pool. As this is T-RAID, this will effectively create a redundant pair, similar to how RAID 1 works, with all data duplicated across the 2 disks. This will then start a process to duplicate the drive, which reports here will take about 6 hours, but in realistic terms it took a bit less than that. Then we add a third disk, and now we have an equivalent of a RAID 5 array, e.g. 1 disk's worth of parity. So we get all the capacity from this third disk, and the flexibility of T-RAID is that you can start with 1 disk, you can expand and gain capacity and redundancy without having to rebuild the array. And I haven't done this here of course, but these disks can actually be of different sizes, as long as the new disks are at least the size of the smaller disk that exists in the array already. And this is really good for home and small business users, especially who want to get the most value out of those disks and get the best flexibility. The process to shuffle data from a mirror to a parity disk-based protection mechanism takes a while to complete, but it's a one-time change. I think it was reported at about 6 hours, and realistically it probably took about 12. Now, one of the major shortcomings here is support for data scrubbing. Best I can tell is that this was supported and that support has been removed, hopefully temporarily. It's one of the big benefits of running the BTRS file system, and it's an important tool to prevent data loss from bit rot. I hope this gets fixed and returned to customers soon. And I will be doing some TOS 6 testing and checking here also. But for example, I run a scheduled scrub on my Synology NAS devices to validate data integrity, and I think it's an important thing to do. In terms of hard disk support, it's really broad, as it should be. I'm not really compelled right now to buy Synology products moving forward due to this increasing stance of locking customers into their own drives, which are just grossly overpriced and rebadged versions of those from other manufacturers. The primary compatibility limitation I see is that TerraMaster recommend not to use SMR disks, which is absolutely correct. Do not get those things near your NAS. Creating users and managing group memberships is also straightforward, and you can also assign quotas to limit disk consumption if this use case applies to you. You can apply permissions to these users or to their groups to the shared folders with various permissions just fine. And of course, you can create those shared folders for various purposes, select the storage they will be hosted on, and configure policies around quotas here. I do like that you can apply policies to share folders around where you can access them from, as well as the user groups and the permissions. In short, all this works just great. Just please give me back the file integrity checking, please, if you can, TerraMaster. Now, let's dig into some of the core bundled app. Other than file storage, another key use case for NAS is backups, and TerraMaster provide a number of backup options. This includes backing up your PC to your NAS, backing up a NAS to another NAS, backing up between a NAS and a cloud drive, and backing up to USB. And I'm going to do a deeper video on some of these options, but a brief overview is as follows. So for backing up PCs, TerraMaster do bundle the OMI Backupper app. Now, OMI have a good reputation for some data management tools, and I use their Petition Assistant personally for petition management, but also for disk testing. Their Backupper app has a good reputation for ease of use, and you can use it for folder backups on your PC or for backing up entire petitions, so you can do things like system recovery. It also includes tools for recovery, including boot petition that you can install on your PC, which you can use to recover your system if your machine won't boot, for example, and this seems to work well. I tested some of the other backups also, but honestly, I wasn't able to get a few of them working. CloudSync provides a way to make a folder on the NAS replicate to a cloud service like Box or Google Drive or OneDrive. Now, I couldn't successfully connect it to OneDrive, even though the authentication process seemed complete successfully. Doing some investigation on the support site suggests that there may be an issue here that's being investigated. I tried to use an alternate account, but then I ran into an issue where the state seemed to get messed up, so I rebooted the NAS followed, and even then the attempt to set up a OneDrive connection fails before any configuration is even attempted. Then I also tried rsync, so I could do synchronization of folders to a remote server. For example, you could do this to another NAS. I set up an rsync server on a Rocky Linux box, and I was able to successfully authenticate and test the connection. However, it looks like the next part of the dialog requires that I select a directory to use from an empty list, and creating subdirectories on the rsync server didn't seem to change this, so there didn't seem to be a way to progress there, so I couldn't get this working. Again, some research indicated that other people were asking questions about how to get this working, and I didn't see anybody saying that there was a way to do it, so I think there also might be some known issues here that are being worked on. So that's a bit of a shame, as these are useful tools which seem to at least exist, but let's move on to the area that I actually see as incredibly valuable for this device, and that's really around hosting of containerized and virtualized workloads. The CPU grunt and the memory in this device, along with the storage capacity, could make this an excellent addition actually to anybody's home lab, or anyone who wants to run VMs, educate themselves on various technologies, or host things like home automation tooling. Firstly, with those 8 cores and 32GB DDR5 RAM, you can run quite a lot of virtual compute. So let's start with the VMs. So firstly, TerraMaster does not provide a native app for VM management like some providers do, which I think is a bit of a shame. But that said, it does package Oracle VirtualBox in its App Center, and actually this is a really solid VM management tool, and many are going to be familiar with using this. Setting up a new VM is fairly painless, though VirtualBox doesn't do the best job in my view in making it easy for those who are new to running virtual machines. I uploaded some ISOs to a directory on the NAS, I then created a VM and assigned it some resources such as memory, CPU and disk, and you also need to decide how it needs to be accessible from the outside. For example here, I bridge the VM, which means it can get an IP address from my DHCP server, and for most, that'll just be from the home router, but that means it's accessible on the network. If you use NAT for connectivity, the server will be able to talk out by hiding behind the NAS IP, but you probably won't have connectivity in from outside. So this is fine for plenty of use cases, but you need to pick the right option for your use case. Being that this is not a native app, direct access to the console is not directly in the UI, but you do get a link to connect over a remote desktop protocol so you can access the virtual machine console. And this all works well, and you can run quite a few VMs with this available resource. Just be selective where the VM and its disk are located. Depending on your purpose, you may want to put the VM's hard disk, virtual disks, on NVMe rather than on the hard disk. So just think about where you're going to be hosting those virtual disks. Now moving on to Docker, you will need to install both the Docker Engine and the Docker Manager apps, now the latter being TerraMaster's own native container management tool, and this allows for easy browsing of the container registries, management of images and running containers. And this really opens up some nice functionality options both for the NAS-based services but also for home lab scenarios given the hardware you have available here. Another area that is often important to home NAS users is media management. And of course, you can just host the media on the NAS and you can deliver it over SMB or similar to a media player elsewhere. But it's common for people to use a NAS for media delivery and transcoding, and this device has the grunt to do this very effectively. Plex, probably the most popular media center, is accessible natively in the App Center, as is MB. Jellyfin is also available, which is basically a fork from MB, but this is available in the Community App Store. So it's not formally validated and provided by TerraMaster, but TOS does provide really solid options for playing media, and the F4-424 Pro hardware is well suited to transcoding or playing that content. Now let's look at security. And there's a standard baseline for functionality in the device, like configurable idle timeouts for access sessions, automatic blocking of failed login attempts, as well as auto unblocking. But there isn't a way to natively whitelist IP address here for access, but notionally you could do this by managing the firewall. Now the firewall management itself isn't that easy to use, however. It looks like you can define deny rules, but though there's an option to also configure allow rules, every rule I wrote just threw an error. Also, you can't manage rule ordering, so this probably does the job just fine as a really simple deny list, but managing an ordered rule set of allows and denies doesn't appear possible as it stands today. The rules are inserted straight into IP tables on the host in the forwarding and input chains, and I think a few small improvements here could make these more flexible and manageable. And of course, I'm looking at TOS 5.1 here with TOS 6 just around the corner. I'll need to have a look at how these evolved, and my expectations may be kind of high, mainly because I've spent years managing enterprise firewalls. But this covers what I believe are the key things. So before I get to the summary on my take on this device, I would greatly appreciate it if you can smash that like button, and also do consider subscribing if you like this content. I release content on compute, storage and home automation and these kind of subjects. I so appreciate the support those that have watched my channel have given in helping me grow my small corner of YouTube, and the likes and subs are probably one of the most powerful things that help, so thank you. Right, in summary, hardware wise, this provides excellent hardware, I think, at a price point of about $700 US, 630 UK pounds, or about 730 euros. For that, you get the 8-core i3 processor and 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM. The build is functional and it's non-nonsense, but it's also compact. It provides the 4 displays and space to fit 2 NVMEs, as well as 2 ports of 10 gigabits per second USB connectivity and those 2.5 gigabyte per second Ethernet interfaces. You can also pair it with one of TerraMaster's DASs or another USB device if you want to expand the disk availability beyond the 4 bays. Software-wise, the key functionality is all there that you would need for a NAS, including storage, user group permissions, quotas, etc. And it can support a variety of data protection options, including T-RAID, which does provide flexible ways to upgrade and get the most out of your disk capacity. So this is really good. It also provides multiple options for media playing and data backups, but there are a few gaps in the more advanced capabilities, however. And not so much because the capabilities don't always exist, but in some cases they appear to exist, but they don't quite function correctly. At least they didn't during my testing. If TerraMaster could prioritize fixes there, then there would be some significant improvement potential. For example, getting data scrubbing working on some kind of schedule should be a focus. That's a huge tool for data integrity, and BTRFS brings capabilities along with T-RAID. It would be huge. Some of the backup tooling looks like it also needs addressing, and when I look at TOS 6, I'm hoping this is corrected, but we're going to find out about that imminently, so do look out for those updates. And I would love to see a native VM management capability that felt a bit more integrated, but ultimately VirtualBox is a really capable product. It's just a little bit more complex for those not yet experienced with running VMs. Now, the security feature set could also get a little bit of attention, but this is one area I believe TerraMaster have added focus to in TOS 6, so check that video out and let's see how that moves forward. So all of this, as I said, in a compact and really very quiet form factor. So overall, I like the F4-424 Pro, and I use it to host VMs as well as for regular storage capabilities. I can move these VMs off a rack mount server that I have in a garage in a rack that consumes a lot of power, so it's a great device to fill that gap. I will include affiliate links below to the devices I've talked about in this video. They don't cost anything for you to use, but they do help support the channel, so again, I appreciate it and thank you. I'm already working on a review of the F4-424 Max, which is a brand new addition to the range just released, so not to spoil it too much here, but it's an even more powerful member of the product family, which opens up even more capabilities. So on that note, I will see you in the next.